Hi, I'm Natalie Dale with the Georgia Department of Transportation. Thank you for visiting this interactive virtual meeting room that has been developed for the public hearing open house for the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lanes project, which is part of Georgia DOT's Major Mobility Investment Program. This proposed project would add 2 new barrier-separated express lanes in both directions of a portion of I-285 and State Route 400, improving mobility for thousands of Metro Atlanta motorists and transit riders on a daily basis. This proposed project spans 3 counties, Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb, and crosses several cities, including Smyrna, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Chamblee, Doraville, and Tucker. The purpose of this public hearing open house, or PHOH, is to share updated information about the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lanes project, such as the latest concept design and environmental document, to offer you an opportunity to provide comment on any aspect of the project during this public comment period. To include your feedback in the official project record, make sure to submit your comments by the date shown on the screen. This virtual open house platform provides the same project information you would find at an in-person PHOH. On this interactive platform and on the project website, you will find current project information that has been updated since the public information open house hosted by us in early 2020. We encourage you to visit each room or station and click on the latest concept design or preferred alternative, the project's draft environmental impact statement, review the proposed mitigation plan, and so much more. If you have questions or need to review project information and materials in any other format, please contact us at one of the following ways shown on your screen. And don't forget, please join us at one of our PHOH events so you can learn more about the proposed project and speak directly with project staff. Upcoming events are posted on the screen. We hope you can attend either an in-person open house or virtual question and answer session. Again, thank you for visiting our virtual meeting room, and we encourage you to review the updated project information and environmental documents. And don't forget to submit your feedback about this project before the public comment period deadline. There are multiple ways you may provide comment on the proposed project shown on your screen. But one convenient option is built right into this virtual meeting room platform. Visit the public comment station and complete the online comment form to share your feedback. We look forward to hearing from you and have a great day.
Hello, my name is Xavier James, Georgia DOT Project Manager for the P3 Division. I am glad that you can join us today to learn more about the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project, PI number 0001758. Let's get started with today's presentation ahead of our virtual question and answer session. First, the northern half of the I-285 is one of the most heavily traveled and congested interstate highways in the United States. More than 240,000 vehicles travel across this stretch of highway every weekday. The proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project is part of a larger effort to improve traffic flow and provide reliable trip times on our Metro Atlanta interstates. Instead of continuing to build general purpose lanes that will continue to fill up with vehicles, the Atlanta Regional Commission and our State Transportation Board adopted express lanes as a solution to manage congestion in Metro Atlanta and to provide reliable trip times as more people and businesses move to the region. Express lanes are optional price managed lanes that complement the existing interstate in some of the most congested corridors around Metro Atlanta. You don't have to use them, but motorists and transit customers can take advantage of the lanes to bypass congestion for a free-flowing trip. And that's right, I said it, transit customers. Georgia Express lanes are considered transit lanes, supporting opportunities for existing transit services and inclusion of new transit opportunities along I-285 corridor. Express Lane Transit, or ELT, allows public transit providers that operate in these corridors, including express, MARTA, and state-registered van pools to use the express lanes free of charge. Transit and registered van pool riders will only need to pay their standard transit rider fee. The proposed express lanes on I-285 are a mobility choice and expected to improve regional mobility, provide more reliable trip times for motorists, while also increasing on-time transit performance and accessibility. Identified in 2016, the Ambitious Major Mobility Investment Program, or MMIP, is the first of its kind in the country and was developed to improve quality of life and build a better Georgia by creating additional capacity, improving freight movement, providing operational improvement and efficiencies, enhancing safety, and offering more reliable trip times. Within the MMIP portfolio are the addition of express lanes or managed lanes on State Route 400 and along the northern half of I-285 corridor. The I-285 Top-End Express Lane project proposes to add two new barrier-separated express lanes along I-285 between South Atlanta Road and Henderson Road, as well as on State Route 400 from South Glen Ridge Connector to the vicinity of North Springs MARTA Station. The proposed project spans three counties, Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb, crosses several cities, including Smyrna, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Chamblee, Doraville, and Tucker. The Express Lane project will be part of a larger Express Lane network. Motorists will be able to access Express Lane facilities at dedicated interchanges and direct merge locations. The proposed access points can be seen on the illustrated map on your screen. Locations of the access points are subject to change. You may be wondering, how are these express lanes going to be built? Based on the latest project design or preferred alternative, majority of the project will be elevated to minimize the impact to adjacent properties. Some sections of the proposed project will also be at grade. As you can see, areas of the project that have elevated lanes would extend above and alongside existing general purpose lanes on I-285. The project team studied a range of alternatives and design options to determine which alternative best addresses the mobility needs for the proposed project. We encourage you to scan the QR code or visit the project website to view the latest concept design layouts, which provide an area view of the project limits for the project's preferred alternative. As considered in the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS, the DEIS document offers an in-depth description of each alternative within the range of alternatives, including the no-bill alternative, the preferred alternative, and other alternatives that were considered. As mentioned earlier, the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane is part of the MMIP portfolio and will be part of the Georgia Express Lanes network. However, express lanes on I-285 were being considered before the MMIP was announced as part of the Georgia DOT's Revive 285 initiative. Over the years, GDOT and its project team has engaged with local stakeholders and the public to demonstrate and showcase the proposed express lane project. The project team hosted a community conversation meeting series in 2019, followed by the Public Information Open House series in 2020, conducted insights sessions with local stakeholders, community partners, and businesses, issued surveys for the project team, and have responded to meetings, requests, and public inquiries. As you can see on the project milestone timeline, the proposed project is now hosting an official public comment period as part of the Public Hearing Open House series, or PHOH. This is your opportunity to review and provide your feedback that may be considered and will be incorporated in the official project records. We encourage you to submit comments on the updated concept design, DEIS document, mitigation plan. Following the close of the PHOH comment period, the project team will update the EIS document describing the project's potential environmental impact and include your comments and feedback in the EIS for final submittal. A record of decision, or ROD, is the final step to the EIS process and will be issued by FHWA announcing the selected alternative, informed by public and agency input. Georgia DOT anticipate final EIS and ROD from FHWA in late 2025. Please keep in mind this date is subject to change. And that concludes our presentation overview for the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project. If you haven't already, we encourage you to visit the virtual meeting room platform on the project's website where you can review the following project information: latest concept, display, or preferred alternative, DEIS document, and proposed mitigation plan. Once you have viewed project materials, remember to submit comments on the proposed project. Your feedback and questions must be submitted by July 29, 2024. In addition to the virtual question and answer session, we will also be offering multiple in-person public hearing open house events. If you have any family, friends, or neighbors who are not able to join us today, we hope you tell them to stop by one of our in-person events. All the information available on the project website and presented in the virtual meeting rooms will be presented at the in-person open house events. Again, we hope you will review the DEIS mitigation plan and the updated concept design. If you have any questions, our panel of subject matter experts are available to answer. Once your question has been answered, please take a moment to submit your feedback on the proposed project via our online comment card, email, calling the project hotline, or by mailing your comments to the Georgia DOT offices. Now, I will hand it off to my colleague and the host for today's event, Kyle Collins. Thank you again for joining our virtual presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you during our question and answer session in just a few minutes.
Thanks, Natalie and Xavier. So welcome to this Georgia DOT virtual presentation and question and answer session as part of the Active Public Hearing Open House, or PHOH, for the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lanes project. This I-285 proposed project will improve travel times and reliability, as well as enhance regional transit between I-75 and I-85. I'm Kyle Collins with GDOT Communications, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. On behalf of Georgia DOT and the entire project team, we appreciate you joining us. This virtual presentation and question and answer session is specific to the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lanes project, project number 0001758. Today's purpose is sharing key details about the latest design concept and draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, for this project. Please keep in mind that this preliminary design concept is not yet final, so all the materials you see here are subject to change. One of the big ways you can make your voice heard is by submitting comments about the proposed Express Lanes project. We'll explain all the ways you can do that in just a minute. First, let's go over some tips for navigating this live virtual event. Today's virtual event is designed to give you, the public, the opportunity to learn more about the I-285 Top-End Express Lanes project and to ask questions directly of the Georgia DOT project team. For the best experience, make sure you have a reliable Wi-Fi or wired internet connection. But if you get disconnected, don't worry about it. You can always log back into the session. Closed captioning is also available in multiple languages. To turn that on, simply navigate to the top of your screen, click the Captions button, and captioning will open at the bottom of your screen. Then you click the gear icon to choose your preferred language. And while we're on the language topic, we understand there is a sizable Spanish-speaking population in the I-285 Top-End project area. For that reason, we have a Spanish translator here to help facilitate the meeting. So if you're more comfortable asking questions in Spanish, follow the instructions on this slide to submit your question. Our translator is standing by to consult with our project team subject matter experts and then provide answers in Spanish within the Q&A feature in the Microsoft Teams Town Hall. After we review additional virtual event tips, we'll get to the all-important question and answer session. To submit a question or comment, click on the Q&A button at the top of your screen. This will open up a text box where you can type your question or comment. When finished, click the Send button. You can begin submitting now or at any time during our session using the Microsoft Teams Town Hall Q&A feature. Please note that questions will not be visible until published by the moderator. To make this a successful event, we have a few ground rules. This will ensure we maximize your time and answer questions accurately and thoughtfully. As an audience member, you're going to be in listen-only mode throughout the event. All questions and comments must be submitted through the Q&A feature. Today's session will be recorded and questions and comments will become part of the official public record. Please keep questions concise, appropriate, and specific to this project. The project team may group similar questions together. We're not going to repeat questions and answers until we have been through all questions. The nature of your comment requires a specific response from one of our technical subject matter experts. We don't wish to share your personal information in this forum and encourage you to submit a formal comment. Your comment and our response will become public record located in the project's comment response letter. There are multiple ways to submit a comment. Please visit the project website to review those options or click the link to navigate directly to the comment form. And lastly, if there are any public officials joining us, please send us your name and office for our records. So just like Natalie and Xavier described, Georgia DOT has a dedicated website virtual meeting room hub showcasing the latest project design, draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and much more. In the VMR, you can access all the same information available at an in-person open house event, organized into informational stations. We'll also revisit what's housed there throughout this session. When you first click to enter the virtual meeting room, you're going to see the welcome station. From there, you can click on each station at the top of your screen for an in-depth look at the project details, including a station where you can submit your comments. So the comment station provides two methods for submitting through the end of the comment period, which is Monday, July 29th. You can also send an email, leave a voicemail, or mail in your feedback by using the contact information shown here. In addition to this virtual session, Georgia DOT has hosted several in-person PHOH meetings, with one more tomorrow in Sandy Springs. You can see the time and date on your screen. During these open house sessions, you'll be able to view the preliminary concept displays and project information, ask questions of the subject matter experts, and leave a comment. Project materials can also be viewed in person through Monday, July 29th by visiting our Georgia DOT District 7 Metro office located at 5025 New Peachtree Road in Chamblee. If you need an accommodation and require materials in an accessible format, please contact the District Planning and Programming Coordinator for District 7, which is Joshua Higgins. Josh can be found at 770-216-3896. Robust feedback during the previously held public information open house and now public hearing open house ensures that decisions are made in consideration of and to the benefit of public needs and preferences. This brings us to today's question and answer session. We're going to go back and review some of the tips for navigating the live virtual event to make sure it's valuable for everyone joining us today. Closed captioning is available in multiple languages. Turn on that feature, navigate to the settings at the top of your screen. You're going to remain in listen-only mode and will stay muted during the event, but questions can be submitted anytime during the 2 hours. The session will be recorded and questions and comments will become part of the public record. Please keep those questions concise, appropriate, and specific to this project. The project team may also group similar questions together. A reminder, if the nature of your comment requires a specific response from one of the technical subject matter experts, we don't wish to share your personal information in this forum and encourage you to submit a formal comment. Your comment and our response will become public record located in the project's official comment response letter. There are multiple ways to submit a comment. Please visit the project website to review those options. And lastly, if we have any public officials tuning in, please send us your name and office for our records. So now we're going to get to the Q&A portion of this event. So we have a team of subject matter experts on hand to answer a lot of questions and many more staffers working behind the scenes to ensure this process goes as smoothly as possible. So some of the experts you'll see pop up on screen are experts in air, noise, right-of-way, project design, and environmental disciplines, prepared to inform you, the public. As I mentioned earlier, this proposed project would bring 2 express lanes to the top end of I-285, spanning a roughly 20-mile area. The project would start at South Atlanta Road near I-75 and extend all the way along the top end to just past I-85 near Henderson Road, as well as on State Route 400 from south of the Glen Ridge Connector to the vicinity of the North Springs MARTA station. Georgia Express lanes are multimodal commute options that promote transit use and operations in the corridor. So what you're seeing here on your screen is a project visual rendering, giving folks the opportunity to imagine what it could look like and how traffic would flow once construction is complete. So to view this video in its entirety or to focus on where you live, where your commute may take you. Visit the project website anytime to scroll through this video. Please keep in mind that this is a preliminary design concept and it's not yet final, so all the materials you see here are subject to change. So as we start to have a few questions trickle into the Q&A feature, we're going to kick it straight to GDOT's Air and Noise Section Manager, Miles Kemp, on a very common interstate project concern. How do we determine whether noise barriers will be installed in parts of the I-285 top-end express lanes project area? Take it away, Miles.
Thank you, Kyle. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Miles Kemp, the Air and Noise Section Manager for the Georgia Department of Transportation. So as part of the environmental studies for this project, a traffic noise analysis was conducted to determine the acoustic impact of the proposed I-285 top-end express lane project to noise-sensitive resources, such as single-family or multifamily residences, as well as public outdoor spaces along the project corridor. Following the completion of this traffic noise analysis, all areas projected to experience future traffic noise impacts associated with the project were then assessed to determine if various forms of noise abatement, including noise barriers, would be effective and constructible mitigation measures for each of these impacted areas. So concerning the findings of this noise abatement analysis, there are 14 existing noise barriers along the project corridor that are expected to initially require the removal of the existing walls to allow for the construction of the project, followed by the subsequent replacement of those removed noise barriers in approximately the same locations. An additional 13 existing barriers along the project corridor would otherwise remain at their current location and would also be undisturbed, though there is one location that we expect to extend the existing noise barrier at. Finally, we have 15 locations along the project corridor where additional noise abatement is being considered, with new noise barriers being considered likely but not guaranteed for those areas. So in that regard, please do note that the results from the noise assessment are currently based on preliminary design information, and that these initial noise abatement findings presented for the project are subject to future refinement and reevaluation if triggered by any changes to the project that require reassessment. Additionally, we've also prepared for you an interactive noise tool that essentially highlights the findings of this noise impact assessment and the noise abatement analyses. So you can access this on the public-facing top-end express lanes webpage in the VMR, the virtual meeting room. Once you click on that, you'll see a prompt that essentially indicates that, again, this information is preliminary in nature based upon the preliminary design for the project. What this allows you to do, it works a lot like, say, Google Maps or whatnot. You can type in an address up in the top right corner. And once you type that in, even maybe a street address, something of that nature, it'll give you a drop down for what it thinks you're looking for. You can click on that and it should zoom into generally the location for that address, like where that's along the project corridor. Once you start looking around this interactive tool, you'll see a lot of little dots, many different colors. Those are meant to highlight the various resources and properties that we assessed or included in our noise assessment along the project corridor within the noise study area. So if you look in the top right kind of corner there, we have that legend that highlights each of these individual different colored dots as what we call receptors. And again, they're representing those different properties along the project area, highlighting whether or not they are noise sensitive or not. And if they are noise sensitive, what that expected effect by the proposed project is projected to be. So we may see colors that show that, this property associated with this receptor is considered to be impacted by traffic noise as part of the project, or perhaps it's not proposed to be impacted in the future. And again, you do have many dots along the property or along the project corridor that highlight non-noise sensitive resources. Additionally, for those that are impacted or not impacted, you will also see whether or not they are expected to experience a benefit from a noise barrier that may currently be proposed for that area. And again, it's preliminary information right now. As part of this legend, you will also see a number of different lines in various colors meant to highlight those existing barriers that are currently along the corridor that would remain undisturbed based upon the current expectations for the project. You will also see existing barriers that are expected to be removed and replaced as part of the project. And then you'll also see another color for new barriers that are being proposed for this project. And then lastly, at the very bottom of that legend, you'll also see where we have identified areas using that kind of cross shading. We're kind of boxing in areas where we identified noise impacts being expected to occur associated with the project and the noise assessment. However, for one reason or another, noise abatement, such as noise barriers, may not be able to be considered for those areas for a variety of reasons. One such concern could be a lack of constructability or maintenance concerns associated with that area that are otherwise precluding us from constructing a barrier based upon GDOT's safety guidelines and standards. So that's pretty much an overview of this tool. Again, you can kind of click on various items. Like if you click on, say some of those receptors, it should generally identify, whether that receptor qualifies as impacted or not. In this case, the one on the screen is shown to be non-noise sensitive. But again, that information is generally summarized for each of those little dots. If you click on it, you should get this bubble that pops up. Additionally, if you click on one of those barriers, it should also identify generally what barrier type or I guess status it qualifies as. In this case, this one we're showing as an example is a replace in kind barrier, and the average height that's expected for this barrier that's notated there on the bottom is approximately 30 feet. And again, that's just an average, so it could differ from section to section, but across the barrier, it's generally expected to be an average of 30 feet. For some of those shaded areas, if you do click on those, you may see additional information that it identifies generally why a barrier is not proposed for that area at this point in time. And so for an example, like the one that you're seeing on the screen here, it's indicating that, based upon either construction or design limitation, perhaps we're not able to propose a noise barrier that would actually be effective at reducing traffic noise for that area. And that could, again, be tied to a number of reasons, such as terrain along that area, or maybe there's just some constructability limitations that otherwise cap maybe the barrier design that we could consider for that area. So I definitely encourage everyone to kind of take a look at this tool. If you have any questions for any specific areas beyond what may be provided in this tool, certainly feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to address your questions and comments.
Thanks, Miles. And obviously, this is a hot topic for our initial questions in the Q&A, so we're going to keep you up for a little bit. I definitely have a back-to-back and maybe a third one tacked in on there. So first question coming in on the sound front is, where does a decision to not put a sound barrier between Roswell Road and Lake Forest westbound fit in these guidelines? Your report leaves out the details of the reasonableness for this area while acknowledging the impact. The eastbound side has just as steep a bank as the Allen Road Park area. In order to determine cost reasonableness, a noise barrier must cost $55,000 or less per benefited receptor. A $25 per square foot unit construction cost, post and panels shall be used when determining cost reasonableness. So just wanted to read the whole thing. So
no, certainly, and thank you, Kyle, for that question. So for a number of those barriers that we have assessed along the project corridor, where we have impact areas that are projected, there are locations where they did not meet the initial feasibility kind of check or analysis. And feasibility is kind of a blanket term to discuss or cover constructability issues, a lack of potential performance of that noise barrier to effectively provide noise reduction. And in cases, maybe such as this one, if we have feasibility concerns that preclude us from considering that barrier further, we may not even assess it for reasonableness, including costs. The overall kind of reduction could be a factor in, kind of veering us away from, again, addressing kind of cost concerns. But we're not going to typically address, those kind of cost projections if we can't either safely or effectively construct a noise barrier in certain areas. For this area, I would say that, and I'll have to defer some of this to probably a designer, because again, a lot of that design information is what drove what we could ultimately consider in our noise assessment. My understanding for this area is that we have very limited space for where we could construct a ground-mounted noise barrier based upon where those express lanes are being proposed outside of the existing I-285 roadway or footprint. And with that being said, we have limited locations beyond just the existing ground that we can consider a noise barrier. If we have to say construct or consider a noise barrier on, say, another structure or a retaining wall, that could generally limit the overall height and dimensions that maybe we can consider for that area, and that could affect the overall performance of such a barrier. So, even if we were able to construct something, say, feasibly on a retaining wall, that noise barrier may not actually be providing any real noise reduction if we can't reach an adequate height. So that is something that's ultimately considered in the analysis. If we can kind of look at something that might have limited dimensions. Additionally, though, if we can't construct that noise barrier on a retaining wall, it could be a matter of, hey, that existing retaining wall is not designed to accommodate any additional structure mounted on top of it. And if as part of the project, it's not within the scope to replace that retaining wall, then we may not be planning to otherwise construct something that could accommodate a noise barrier. But I'll have to defer some of that discussion as far as what's currently being considered for the project beyond just, say, noise barriers, or for this barrier maybe tied to other structural concerns. I don't know if we have a designer who could potentially talk about maybe this location or just generally.
Hey, thanks, Miles. And yeah, that's an excellent question. And in this area, those that are familiar with what's recently been constructed along 285 know that the Allen Park area sort of sits down below the existing interstate. There's a giant, very tall retaining wall built up to support the interstate. And unfortunately, that retaining wall was not designed to accommodate a noise barrier. So we can't retrofit that wall without completely reconstructing it, which is why it's infeasible from a constructability standpoint. To the fact that Miles alluded to earlier, the maximum height of a ground-mounted wall is about 30 feet per our specifications right now. And so if we were to mount a wall down at the bottom of that retaining wall, it actually wouldn't get to above the barrier because the wall is so tall. So it would provide basically zero abatement. It also would increase impacts to Allen Park, which we don't have right now currently. So that's the reason, Miles, why we don't have a noise barrier from a design perspective. So if there's any other aspects of that, I'll be happy to answer that. But that should give you a little bit more context there.
Appreciate that, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, Miles, I'm going to get you back up again. So we were going through the noise barrier breakdown and what folks could access on the noise tool. We have some requests to actually show on screen kind of the west part of 400 that could potentially be impacted, just to showcase that part of the tool feature. So we'll kind of get that back up here just to make sure folks can see what's available there. And if you want to add any of your expertise, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you, Kyle. Yeah, so if we're looking at some of those areas along, 400, we'll see a number of things on there. I believe we're seeing a barrier that is currently being constructed, as part of the Transform project. And again, just to confirm, we're talking about 400 on the west side. So if that's the case, then again, we can generally see areas that are either qualifying as impacted or not. Receivers that might be behind existing barriers that are already benefited. And based upon what I'm seeing right here, it doesn't look like we're proposing to replace any of those ones as part of this project. So it appears that they would generally be undisturbed. Let me just double check really quick. I think if we go a little further up 400, let's see, that's north of Abernathy Road. There is one barrier that I believe we have proposed as a new barrier on the southbound side of 400. Just I guess a little bit to the left of where that mouse was. But yeah, just basically on that southbound side north of Abernathy Road. Like I was saying, there's a number of noise barriers that have been fairly recently constructed as part of the 400 portion of the Transform 285-400 project. And so based upon the current expectations for the preliminary design, we're generally assuming we're not going to impact or disturb those existing barriers. So a lot of those can remain in their current locations. But again, if this information changes based upon any kind of design revisions in the future, we will continue to reassess, and it is our goal generally to attempt to retain a lot of those existing barriers out there, either through simply not disturbing them, or replacing them more or less in the same kind of location, and generally with similar effectiveness for noise reduction.
Thanks, Miles. So we're going to field a few more noise questions, and then we're going to actually kind of tour west of 400, going down the 285 corridor. Some folks were curious about that in addition to what we just went through. So not first question, another noise question for you, Miles. So when was the latest noise study actually conducted?
Yeah, certainly. So the most recently approved noise impact assessment was approved back in June of 2023. But that's not to say that, all the work was, started or conducted shortly before that. I mean, this project's been in development for a good bit of time, and I believe initially there were field measurements taken along the project corridor. If I'm not mistaken, it was in September of 2019. That's not to say that we're using 2019 noise data or traffic to ultimately identify areas that are expected to experience traffic noise impacts as part of this project, because again, those are circumstances or conditions that are different from what we're currently seeing out there. So those are generally used as field measurements that we might have taken back in 2019 at various locations, are to help kind of identify a bit of a baseline for what we are kind of expecting current traffic noise levels are like out there. And of course, it varies from day to day. So it's generally meant to help what we call validate are the required traffic noise model, and that traffic noise model required by the Federal Highway Administration under the federal noise regulation is what we utilize to essentially project future traffic noise levels once the project is completed. You have all that new construction, any additional express lanes and other improvements, along with any kind of traffic changes that might be associated with the project and just future traffic growth as well. So we're really looking at a traffic noise condition that doesn't currently exist, and the only way and the required way for the process is to assess that or project it using a traffic noise model. So there's a lot of planning. The project design has to ultimately go into all of that. So we have a very arduous process for developing that in coordination with the project engineers and designers, as well as the traffic engineers that project and provide that traffic data for current and then future conditions once the project is expected to be constructed. So part of that, if you're thinking of express lanes, we need to identify where certain classes of vehicles or types of vehicles might be located along the project corridor. So for instance, along those express lanes, we are not going to be expecting any heavy diesel kind of trucks that would be riding along on those. So those being limited to the mainline I-285 and 400 sections generally does affect how traffic noise might be changing in the future, because we're only having maybe 2 lanes on each side, and limiting those generally to say like buses and typical passenger vehicles or cars. So there's a lot of things that ultimately go into that, and as I was mentioning, this process for developing it has it started a good while ago based upon initial design assumptions, and we're continuing to revise that based upon any design changes that might come around in the future. So it's very much tied to and in step with the project design, and any kind of changes to that design could trigger the need for updates to our noise analysis and our projections using that traffic noise model. So I just want to be very clear in indicating that we're not just determining impacts based upon current traffic noise levels. We know and expect that it is going to change a little bit with this proposed project. Generally, it's not going to change, so noticeably in most areas along the corridor, just because existing I-285 is really still going to be the primary noise source. But again, we want to identify what those proposed effects and contributions may be with the proposed project for, again, a future condition.
Thank you, Miles. Got one more, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. So why is there no scheduled sound barrier from Roswell Road to Lake Forest? This area receives massive amounts of traffic and has been excluded when commercial developments, hotels, ice rinks, storage facilities, etc., have a sound barrier being installed.
Yeah, certainly. And I think this may be the same area we were just addressing for another question. And again, we are continuing to reassess based upon current design assumptions. But for some of those areas where we're not proposing noise barriers, and this certainly isn't the only location along the project corridor, there are going to be restrictions and limitations for what we can currently be proposing. It's not to say that, maybe ideally, it would be great for us to put a noise barrier, along all the areas that might have impacts projected. But there are limitations for what we can construct, and for if we can construct something there may be limitations on the dimensions and ultimately the performance of that noise mitigation. And the federal regulations require that we can only really propose noise barriers or noise abatement if it's going to be effective. If those barriers for certain areas might be limited based upon constructability or their effectiveness, their noise reduction performance, then we cannot propose those as noise mitigation measures just because they're not going to be effective. So I know this is definitely an area where we've heard from in the past for other associated projects and just generally over the years, and we're continuing to look at that location and kind of see if there's anything that may have to change in the future or whatnot. But based upon the current assumptions, we do have constructability limitations that would otherwise limit the effective performance of a noise barrier for that area. And I just want to remind you all that this information based upon the noise assessment, it's available in that interactive noise tool, and the noise assessment itself is located on the public website for the Top and Express Lanes project under the environmental section. I believe it's appendix or attachment H9. And again, that provides a bit more detail than simply the interactive tool. So you can definitely find out which of the impact areas we have identified for that area between Roswell and Lake Forest, including other such areas where maybe you're seeing noise barriers not currently being proposed. There is additional detailed information available in that noise assessment. And certainly I encourage anybody who has any questions, concerns, or even suggestions for any of these areas to submit a comment either online or mail in or at our public hearing open house that we are holding tomorrow up in Sandy Springs. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to kick it more to the design side next, and we sort of tease that visual rendering video that's available anytime to view on our website. So I'm going to call on Patrick, and while we're kind of getting the video up, we'll try to get it on sort of the east side as we approach Peachtree Dunwoody, because we actually had a comment / question come in. Patrick, please tell me there will be access from I-285 eastbound to Peachtree Dunwoody.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Kyle. That's a great question. So what you see on the screen here is that we're actually looking up 400. So as the camera comes back south, I'll show you how the access to Peachtree Dunwoody is provided. But as you can just kind of generally see through here, the project is elevated with straddle bents sort of inside the existing 400 footprint. There's not a lot of required right-of-way through here at all. Most of the project was able to fit within the entirety of the SR 400 footprint that was previously acquired and constructed under the Transform project. So spinning around here, heading south. So the express lanes currently don't propose access to Peachtree Dunwoody. That is an existing general purpose exit. And the exit to that road is actually just west of the 400 interchange. So the Transform project constructed a CD system that allows users to still get to Peachtree Dunwoody like they do today. So that is unaffected by the top end project. The express lanes and the associated access points essentially are sort of a separate system, completely barrier separated from the general purpose, but they just sort of are interwoven on top of the existing I-285 intersection. So, and Kyle, as we're just kind of looking here, we're heading back towards the east. So we just are now crossing over the MARTA line. Now we're going over Ashford Dunwoody. And then the project will sort of come back down to grade as we approach the Dunwoody area through the Savoy Cotillion frontage roads, and then go elevated again as we approach Spaghetti Junction towards the east side.
And while we're sort of heading towards 85, I know if folks view the slide of some of the things that have changed since the feedback we got in that 2020 PIOH period, I know one of those was actually a roundabout at Flowers Road. So anything you want to talk through from a design perspective as we approach that Peachtree Boulevard area?
Yeah, so we're still continuing to evaluate the exact intersection configurations at that area. So there is an access point that is west-facing ramps. So that would be an eastbound off-ramp to the Flowers Road area, as well as a westbound on-ramp from the Flowers Road area. And that would basically serve folks from Doraville and into Dunwoody as well. So, but the previous PIOH displays, as well as the EIS, show a roundabout configuration. And what we're currently looking at to see if that's the appropriate solution there now. So
awesome. Thank you, sir. So it's like we've had a few more flow ins as we were going through the visual video and that current design concept for the preferred alternative. So next one, we're actually going to go to GDOT P3 project management. I'm going to call on Cleo to come up on the screen to just answer kind of a general proposed timeline as it pertains to this Top End Express Lanes project. So Cleo, the question is the contract award on track to get started according to the website?
Yes, thank you for your question. The Georgia DOT's current plan is to begin procurement on the I-285 Top End Express Lanes in the fall of 2024 with an anticipated award of the first phase in mid-2026 calendar year.
Sounds good. Thank you for that update. So got a few questions we're working on now. So kind of in the interim, obviously another topic we've been through noise extensively is right-of-way. So there is an informative section in the VMR that we described earlier that's readily available for you to tour to understand that process, see what the proposals would be, what potential impacts could be. So I'm actually going to call on Phil Copeland, our right-of-way expert, SME, to kind of come up on screen. And Phil, just generally kind of walk us through right-of-way 101. First off, what is right-of-way and what are folks looking at when they see some of these design concepts?
Yes, thank you, Kyle. As you mentioned, if you are interested in the potential property impacts along the corridor, again, visit the station that has the concept layout, and you will be able to see in that concept layout the areas where we have assigned potential parcel numbers and have indicated a red line that indicates or identifies the proposed impact to that particular piece of property. Once you have done that, then if you navigate through the VMR to the right-of-way station, to the acquisition station, you will see two displays there. One will be the one that's up on the screen now that is called the right-of-way acquisition process. And that basically outlines the 5 steps, phases, activities that are performed in the right-of-way acquisition process. The first is the pre-acquisition process, where we gather the right-of-way plan sets that we anticipate to reflect the impacts. We look at the ownership of that property so that we can understand the dynamics of ownership and hopefully identify contact points for us to reach out to. And then we go out and we assess the impacts on the property so that we can identify the appraisals and types of appraisals that are needed to measure the compensation that that level of impact would result in. Then as we finish the initial background, looking into everything, fact finding, we go into the appraisal process. That is when the appraiser is assigned by GDOT, reaches out to the property owner to schedule a potential property inspection, visit to the property, meeting with the property owner to walk them through not only the right-of-way plans, but also what they will do in the appraisal process itself. The appraisal will be completed. It will be submitted to a GDOT representative for review to make sure that it has been prepared appropriately. All things have been taken into consideration and to establish what that monetary offer would be to the property owner. Then that information is released to the negotiator that is assigned to the parcel. They put together what we call an offer package, and then they reach out to the property owner or the property owner representative again to actually present that offer. And then that is what is shown there in the third step of the negotiation process. Offer is presented, offer is detailed to the property owner provides feedback to their understanding of the offer, their concerns of the offer, their acceptability of the offer. Through the negotiation phase, hopefully we're able to reach a settlement at those agreed terms, or potentially a negotiated term if there are concerns or legitimate reasons to consider a counter proposal by the property owner. Once we reach an amicable settlement, we move to the closing process. Again, it's very similar to a regular regular real estate transaction where GDOT attorney assigned to that parcel will reach out to the property owner, cover the closing, the transferring of the property. GDOT will cover the cost associated with that closing. Once the property is conveyed to GDOT, if for some reason that acquisition resulted in a relocation, as let's just use a residential property as an example, if we impacted the house itself, if a house itself fell within the required area, then there is a whole nother part of the program that provides relocation assistance for that displaced owner or tenant to move from that location to wherever they have chosen to purchase or rent a replacement location. So again, the display there identifies the 5 steps and a typical time associated with that. As you can see, if you add up those days, cumulatively, they add up to basically a little over a year's time. So it is a very interactive process with the property owner, a very lengthy process, like I say, up to a year to try to work through all those activities. If you're interested in a little bit more information, the other display there is the right-of-way informational brochure. That is a 25 page document that will further outline what I have tried to verbally share with you. It will walk you through each one of those steps, your involvement of a property owner, what to expect in each one of those steps, and the basis for how those steps were developed. That is not a process that we have just developed unique to Georgia. It follows a federally mandated process. Some of it is controlled by regulation. Some of it is controlled by state law. So I would encourage you to visit the displays, visit the right-of-way acquisition process, and then visit the right-of-way informational brochure. If after that you have any other questions as an impacted property owner or just as a concerned citizen, reach out to the website, ask your questions, and we'll do everything possible to get back with you. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Before you go, if we could pull up the design tab and maybe just pull up one of the roll plots. And you did a great job of explaining that extensive process and the due diligence there, but maybe just someone who's never looked at one of these, there is a legend on each one of the roll plots. So maybe just talk the folks through what some of those lines mean, what some of the icons could mean, and how this isn't yet final. You know, there's still going to be further refinements as this project moves along.
Sure, Kyle. I'll wait for it to load there. But as I mentioned earlier, what you're seeing there is the concept display, which is an aerial image of what the existing facility looks like, plus what the proposed facility to look like. And what we have tried to do is in these displays, we have tried to identify existing property lines, and the existing property lines are that lighter blue hash line that is intended to visualize what your existing property line looks like. And then if there is an acquisition, you would see that the red dotted line that would show the proposed impact. We try to assign the parcel numbers and what we know to be the property owner based on the information available through public records. So again, there you can see the one identified to the First Baptist Church of Atlanta. You can see where Cotillion is moving to the north, and because of Cotillion shift to the north, you see that red line leading into the driveway that is depicting an anticipated proposed right-of-way line. You will also see in other displays that if we anticipate an impact that would require a displacement, you would see a red dot on that parcel number indicating that we anticipate it to involve a relocation. So if you look in the legend in the top right, you'll see different identifiers such as what is being shown as right-of-way lines, required right-of-way lines, retaining walls, bridges, and things like that. So again, once you visit that, if you do realize that you're an impacted property owner, by all means, visit what that means as an impacted property owner going forward.
Thank you, Phil. So we're going to shift to project delivery and project management side. So I'm going to call on Cleo again to help me with these two follow-up comments and questions. So Cleo, first one, the comment is, I've seen plans in the past to include a new bike lane / path near the Georgetown area to connect Two Bridges Park to Georgetown Park via the 285 corridor between Ashford Dunwoody and Chamblee Dunwoody. Is that still being considered? And if so, will that happen near the beginning of the project or near the end?
Thanks for the question, Kyle. Georgia DOT has been closely coordinating with the City of Dunwoody on their bike lane and path plans. If you have any questions about these plans, please contact the City of Dunwoody for their specific plans and timeframes.
Awesome. So got two more for you while we got you. How many years is construction planned to last on the 285 top end express lanes?
The current anticipated construction duration, pending the developer contract award, is between 8 to 10 years.
Awesome. And a big benefit of this proposal is expanding options to transit and how that's enhancing mobility for a lot of users in this area of Metro Atlanta. So where are the transit lanes, or do buses have to share space with private vehicles?
Well, Georgia DOT has partnered with MARTA and other bus services such as Greta and CobbLink to provide transit service via Express Lanes Transit. Express Lanes Transit will have full accessibility into the Express Lane system with no additional cost to the ELT rider. The ELT supports transit operations and services, providing more reliable trip times. Additionally, the state registered van pools will also be able to access the express lanes, and buses and van pools will ride with private vehicles in the express lanes. They will all have the same access points, and they will ride in the barrier separated express lanes.
Thanks for that, Cleo. And just a reminder too, that's one of the very important stations inside that virtual meeting room that talks about all the components Cleo just expounded on and how we're collaborating with a lot of entities and agencies to try to deliver that very important aspect within the Georgia Express Lanes network. So we're going to kind of shift. We talked about noise on the environmental front earlier, so we're actually going to call on Amber next for this next question. So Amber, is the project going to take away the playground of Heard's Ferry Elementary and or the football stands for Riverwood High School?
Thank you for the question. No, the project is not proposing to impact the playground of Heard's Ferry Elementary. While right-of-way is required adjacent to Riverwood High School property, the project would not impact the football stands or any of the other recreational facilities there. Thank you so much for the question.
Thanks, Amber. And just wanted to ask too, that virtual footprint that GDOT has, not only for this project, but a lot of others, could you just kind of go through the history and how important that is to offer folks that extra opportunity several weeks where they can digest the information, see all the role plots, see all the project concept, need, and purpose, and how we've really utilized that to continue to meet people where they are.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kyle. So if you've been involved with this project throughout the history, you may have noticed that the website has gone through a number of changes. The way we've been able to reach out to the community and to the public and get all of the information out there has evolved over the years. So we really started researching ways based on feedback that we received from the public of how we could hold events, how we could show information. And around that 2020 timeframe is when we got this updated platform. And so we're really excited to be able to share and meet people where they're at. So people who are unable to attend an in-person public meeting or public hearing like this one, the ones we're having in person, they're able to come to the platform and even attend these virtual meetings. So if you don't have any, if you have friends or family who are unable to attend these, they can always access our website and this updated platform. And the great thing about those is you can walk through the materials. There's also information. You can give people a phone call if there is something confusing as you're going through those materials. But it really gives that feeling that you're at an in-person meeting and also improves the way that we're able to get feedback. And we're really encouraging people to be able to provide and participate in the process instead of just having to go to one or two in-person meetings. We want to really meet the public where they are and of course at a time that's available. So if you're listening and you have friends, neighbors, family, people that you know that access the corridor on a daily basis, we really encourage you to ask them to come to the platform, check things out, even if they're not able to attend our in-person event tomorrow. So we've really developed this based on, again, feedback that we've heard from the public. We do have a comment card. So as you're leaving feedback for this project and this process, we also really encourage you to leave feedback about how we're doing in the virtual platform and any suggestions and recommendations that you guys may have on how we can improve that area. We really appreciate it. And we really thank you and your friends and neighbors for visiting our webpage and participating in virtual events like these. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amber. We're actually going to about an hour in at this point. So folks that may have joined us a little bit later, we're going to pull up our main intro descriptive video from GDOT P3 project manager, Xavier James. It's about 8-minute duration. It gives kind of a robust look on what we're looking at with this current concept, all the ways you can comment, and just all the layers of what potential I-285 top-end express lanes could bring to this area to help multiple users and enhance mobility and give reliable trip time. So we'll roll that video.
Hello, my name is Xavier James, Georgia DOT Project Manager for the P3 Division. I am glad that you could join us today to learn more about the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project, PI number 0001758. Let's get started with today's presentation ahead of our virtual question and answer session. First, the northern half of the I-285 is one of the most heavily traveled and congested interstate highways in the United States. More than 240,000 vehicles travel across this stretch of highway every weekday. The proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project is part of a larger effort to improve traffic flow and provide reliable trip times on our Metro Atlanta interstates. Instead of continuing to build general purpose lanes that will continue to fill up with vehicles, the Atlanta Regional Commission and our State Transportation Board adopted express lanes as a solution to manage congestion in Metro Atlanta and to provide reliable trip times as more people and businesses move to the region. Express lanes are optional price managed lanes that complement the existing interstate in some of the most congested corridors around Metro Atlanta. You don't have to use them, but motorists and transit customers can take advantage of the lanes to bypass congestion for a free-flowing trip. And that's right, I said it, transit customers. Georgia Express lanes are considered transit lanes, supporting opportunities for existing transit services and inclusion of new transit opportunities along I-285 corridor. Express Lane Transit, or ELT, allows public transit providers that operate in these corridors, including Express, MARTA, and state-registered van pools, to use the express lanes free of charge. Transit and registered van pool riders will only need to pay their standard transit rider fee. The proposed express lanes on I-285 are a mobility choice and expected to improve regional mobility, provide more reliable trip times for motorists, while also increasing on-time transit performance and accessibility. Identified in 2016, the Ambitious Major Mobility Investment Program, or MMIP, is the first of its kind in the country and was developed to improve quality of life and build a better Georgia by creating additional capacity, improving freight movement, providing operational improvement and efficiencies, enhancing safety, and offering more reliable trip times. Within the MMIP portfolio are the addition of express lanes or managed lanes on State Route 400 and along the northern half of I-285 corridor. The I-285 Top-End Express Lane project proposes to add 2 new barrier-separated express lanes along I-285 between South Atlanta Road and Henderson Road, as well as on State Route 400 from South Glen Ridge Connector to the vicinity of North Springs MARTA Station. The proposed project spans 3 counties, Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb, crosses several cities, including Smyrna, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Chamblee, Doraville, and Tucker. The Express Lane project will be part of a larger Express Lane network. Motors will be able to access Express Lane facilities at dedicated interchanges and direct merge locations. The proposed access points can be seen on the illustrated map on your screen. Locations of the access points are subject to change. You may be wondering, how are these express lanes going to be built? Based on the latest project design or preferred alternative, majority of the project will be elevated to minimize impact to adjacent properties. Some sections of the proposed project will also be at grade. As you can see, areas of the project that have elevated lanes would extend above and alongside existing general purpose lanes on I-285. The project team studied a range of alternatives and design options to determine which alternative best addresses the mobility needs for the proposed project. We encourage you to scan the QR code or visit the project website to view the latest concept design layouts, which provide an area view of the project limits for the project's preferred alternative. As considered in the draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS, the DEIS document offers an in-depth description of each alternative within the range of alternatives, including the no-bill alternative, the preferred alternative, and other alternatives that were considered. As mentioned earlier, the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane is part of the MMIP portfolio and will be part of the Georgia Express Lanes network. However, express lanes on I-285 were being considered before the MMIP was announced as part of the Georgia DOT's Revive 285 initiative. Over the years, GDOT and its project team has engaged with local stakeholders and the public to demonstrate and showcase the proposed express lane project. The project team hosted a community conversation meeting series in 2019, followed by the public information open house series in 2020, conducting insights sessions with local stakeholders, community partners, and businesses, issued surveys for the project team, and have responded to meetings, requests, and public inquiries. As you can see on the project milestone timeline, the proposed project is now hosting an official public comment period as part of the Public Hearing Open House Series, or PHOH. This is your opportunity to review and provide your feedback that may be considered and will be incorporated in the official project records. We encourage you to submit comments on the updated concept design, DEIS document, mitigation plan. Following the close of the PHOH comment period, the project team will update the EIS document describing the project's potential environmental impacts and include your comments and feedback in the EIS for final submittal. A record of decision, or ROD, is the final step to the EIS process and will be issued by FHWA announcing the selected alternative, informed by public and agency input. Georgia DOT anticipate final EIS and ROD from FHWA in late 2025. Please keep in mind this date is subject to change. And that concludes our presentation overview for the proposed I-285 Top End Express Lane project. If you haven't already, we encourage you to visit the virtual meeting room platform on the project's website, where you can review the following project information: latest concept, display, or preferred alternative, the EIS document, and proposed mitigation plan. Once you have viewed project materials, remember to submit comments on the proposed project. Your feedback and questions must be submitted by July 29, 2024. In addition to the virtual question and answer session, we will also be offering multiple in-person public hearing open house events. If you have any family, friends, or neighbors who are not able to join us today, we hope you tell them to stop by one of our in-person events. All the information available on the project website and presented in the virtual meeting rooms will be presented at the in-person open house events. Again, we hope you will review the DEIS mitigation plan and the updated concept design. If you have any questions, our panel of subject matter experts are available to answer. Once your question has been answered, please take a moment to submit your feedback on the proposed project via our online comment card, email, calling the project hotline, or by mailing your comments to the Georgia DOT offices. Now I will hand it off to my colleague and the host for today's event, Kyle Collins. Thank you again for joining our virtual presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you during our question and answer session in just a few minutes.
Thanks for the handoff, Xavier. So we do understand there is a sizable Spanish-speaking population in the I-285 Top End project area. For that reason, we have a Spanish translator here to help facilitate this meeting. So if you're more comfortable asking questions in Spanish, follow the instructions on this slide to submit your question. Our translator is going to stand by and he'll consult with the project's subject matter experts and then provide answers in Spanish within the Q&A feature in Microsoft Teams Town Hall. So to submit a question, click on the Q&A button at the top of your screen. This will open a text box where you can type your question or comment. When finished, click the send button. You can now begin submitting, or at any time during the session until 1 p.m. using the Microsoft Teams Town Hall Q&A feature. Please note that questions will not be visible until published by the moderator. As an audience member, you're going to stay in listen-only mode throughout the event. All questions and comments must be submitted through that Q&A feature. Today's session is going to be recorded, and questions and comments will become part of the public record. Please keep questions concise, appropriate, and specific to this project. Project team may group similar questions together, and we're not going to repeat questions and answers until we have been through all questions. The nature of your comment requires a more specific response from one of our technical subject matter experts. We don't wish to share your personal information in this forum and encourage you to submit a formal comment. Your comment and all response will become part of the public record located in the project's official comment response letter. So there are multiple ways to submit a comment. Make sure you visit the project website to review those options. Okay, kind of went back through the rules of the meeting today. So I had a few additional questions come in. So we're going to bring our noise expert, air and noise GDOT section manager, Miles Kemp. So this one pertains to noise barrier materials and what we've considered on these proposed noise mitigation measures, Miles. So the question is, have you considered installing noise barrier made of see-through fiberglass wall on the sides of the express lane itself? It's being done in other countries.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, I'm happy to discuss that a bit. I'll just say that generally, the default materials that we would consider for ground-mounted barriers are typically concrete. it allows us a little bit more of an opportunity to kind of control the texture, the color, basically that aesthetic aspect that may be beneficial or desired by the public. And that's something that we do encourage input and feedback on from the public. Typically, further on once we've kind of confirmed all the final barrier locations and the final design. But again, as part of the comment response period, we absolutely encourage that, if there's something that you want to recommend, you want to see for some of these locations beyond just our standard materials, or even if we are considering concrete, what kind of design or kind of look, maybe from an aesthetic standpoint, for visual mitigation, maybe would you like to see? And again, we're still kind of considering that and asking for feedback. Getting to the back to the question, for areas where maybe we are considering noise barriers along structures such as a bridge or even like the elevated express lane sections, we may consider metal barriers typically as the standard, since they're more of a lightweight option and accommodate any additional design standard requirements or limitations compared to say concrete or other materials. Fiberglass or an acrylic noise barrier is definitely something that would qualify as a lightweight material. It's not something we typically consider initially. It's not like our standard default go-to material, but there are some locations in the state that we've utilized it in the past, typically as a form of visual mitigation as well. We don't want to obstruct that line of sight. But for the purpose of this project, we have not generally considered, barriers along the elevated express lanes across the board, largely because the traffic noise that is associated with any of those express lane additions is not generally expected to perceptibly increase traffic noise beyond what is currently out there or what is projected for the future. In many cases, anything that we might have considered along those elevated or just at grade sections would generally not be adding to any additional performance that would be provided by ground mounted barriers or barriers that are kind of at grade and meant to generally mitigate traffic noise from the main noise source, I-285 currently in the main line. So again, while it's not currently considered, is it something that maybe folks would like to see? If that's the case, definitely recommend that folks provide some feedback, some suggestions. Again, if you'd like to see something beyond just our standard default considerations, we absolutely encourage you to provide that feedback. Thank you.
Thanks again, Miles. So we're going to shift to Cleo for this next one, and it involves just kind of high-level design and how we're hoping to improve the transit service, which we've obviously referencing the great benefits proposed to transit riders with the top-end express lanes design. So Cleo, were there any modifications made to the project's design to improve transit service, i.e. off-ramps providing direct access to activity centers?
Thanks for the question, Kyle. GDOT is actively coordinating with MARTA on transit connectivity to the express lanes. MARTA is developing plans for offline transit stations to complement the express lane transit system. For more information on their study, please check out their website as well as their I-285 Transit Study Survey that closes August 1st, 2024.
Thank you. So shifting to Amber again for this next question, kind of on the environmental front and about the studies that go into a proposal of this scope and size. So I might have missed it. What is the expected reduction in traffic once this is completed? All prior studies I've seen show expanding roadways does not actually decrease traffic flow.
All right, that's a great question. So I want to point out that our purpose and need of this project is really to help provide a reliable trip time and allow people who use transit and transit vehicles to also obtain a more reliable trip time. So the primary need and purpose is we're not trying to reduce any vehicles or traffic flow within the general purpose lanes. However, there may be some reduced congestion and improved mobility as a result of this project. We have seen some of that when, for example, the Northwest Corridor opened. So just I just want to make that clear that what the goals and purpose of this project are. However, we do have more details if you're interested in the traffic within the draft EIS that is out there on this public website. And you can look at our Appendix H4, or if you're just looking for a summary of that traffic, it is also in Chapter 1, Need and Purpose of the posted draft EIS. Thank you so much for the question.
Perfect. Thanks, Amber. So going to go to right-of-way next. We have additional right-of-way clarification needed. So I'm going to get Phil Copeland back up on screen to help us with that one. So Phil, on the proposed map, what does proposed required ROW or right-of-way mean? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kyle. As many of us have said throughout the presentation here, much of this facility can be accommodated within the existing right-of-way of the I-285 and supporting corridors. But there are areas where the facility cannot be accommodated, and so therefore we would have to purchase additional right-of-way to accommodate it. So the words that you hear, proposed right-of-way or required right-of-way, is any property that is anticipated to be needed above and beyond what the existing 285 or the supporting roadways right-of-way currently can accommodate. So it is proposed to be purchased as part of this project's right-of-way and property needs. Thank you, Kyle.
Hopefully that answered and clarified what proposed right-of-way means. So thanks again, Phil. So actually going to call on our CERTA partner that's participating in the live session this afternoon for this next line of questioning. And this one pertains to Peach Pass. So will my Peach Pass work on these new lanes?
Great question, Kyle. Thank you for asking. Peach Pass is interoperable, of course, with Florida's Sun Pass, North Carolina's Quick Pass, and Easy Pass, which includes now 19 states along the eastern seaboard. So the I-285 top-end express lanes will expand that seamless network of toll lanes within our state and to other states as well. This is good news for our commuters.
Thank you for the answer, and we definitely appreciate y'all's partnership on this process. So
Happy
next
to partner with GDOT.
Oh yeah, awesome. So next question, we're going to get Cleo to help us with this one from a project management GDOT side, and it pertains to basically duration of how long these proposed lanes would be open. So are these lanes going to be open 24/7 or shut down from time to time like the I-75 South express lanes between Macon and Atlanta?
Yes, thank you. Once the express lanes become operational, they are anticipated to be available 24/7. However, the developer may have to close a lane for operational issues or for maintenance purposes, but large in part, the express lanes, both lanes should be open 24/7.
Thanks for that, Cleo. So for next question, this is back on the design front. So I'm going to call on Patrick to assist us with that, given his lengthy experience in getting us to this point and, helping with the many teams that have worked on the preferred alternative. So Patrick, will there be an exit from the I-285 eastbound express lanes to State Route 400 southbound? The animation did not show an exit ramp at this location. So maybe we can bring up the video too to be helpful as an extra visual.
Yeah, I'll wait for that video to come up on the screen. So where we are right now, just to get your bearings before I answer the questions, we're heading eastbound on I-285 just over Roswell Road. So you'll notice that the question is correct. There actually isn't a proposed access between I-285 eastbound and SR 400 southbound. As a matter of fact, there's no proposed connectivity between the express lanes inside the perimeter at any of the system interchanges, whether it be I-75, SR 400, or I-85 at this time. But ultimately, that could change depending on the developer when they come aboard, based on what their studies and their revenue studies show. So here you are looking south. There's an off-ramp to head north on 400, but that does not then split to the right to head south. So but what does exist is connectivity from 400 northbound. So if you're traveling north from downtown Atlanta heading north, you can get into the express lanes. via the terminal ramps there and head north. Likewise, coming down south, you can get out of the express lanes and back into the SR 400 general purpose lanes as well. There's also a proposed access point at Johnson Ferry Road, connecting to that orange bridge on the bottom of your screen. So opportunities for folks in the area to head north on 400 without having to get into the 285 portion of the express lanes near Perimeter Center.
Thanks, Patrick. And just to clarify too, I know in some of the meetings so far, we've had folks curious about the height of these proposed barriers separated 2 lanes in each direction. Maybe just generally walk us through that on how that could vary just based on the needs to tie into that existing infrastructure.
Oh, sure. That's a great question. And it's one that we're very familiar with now. So as the typical sections show on a lot of our layouts, there's this idea that the express lanes are elevated, and that's 90% of the corridor is elevated. But it's the height of those elevations is going to change depending on where we are. So like when we were just looking at the SR 400 express lane portion of it down at 285, we're going to add another level or 2 to that interchange that was just reconstructed. So that means we'll be, level 5 or 6 high. So that translates to, 60, 70, 80 feet, depending on where you are relative to the lowest level in the interchange. But away from the system interchanges, as we kind of get towards some of the surface roads, that elevation drastically decreases. So we're, able to meet minimum vertical clearance requirements just as we overhang the outside shoulder of the existing interstate. So we're looking at anywhere from, 25 to 30 to 35 feet. And then as we cross over smaller interchanges, those interchanges are already very low in profile. So we only have to add 1 level above those. So we're only going, say, 40, 45, 50 feet above those interchanges. So it just varies based on the complexity of where we are. And as we're approaching Mount Vernon here, heading south on 400, you'll see some tall straddle bents as we're braiding over the center of 400. But the express lanes are really only about 25, 30 feet above the existing Mount Vernon. And then 400 is depressed even more. So relative to the existing 400, you may be high, but relative to the surrounding terrain, we're not as high as most people might think.
Awesome. And Patrick, kind of spent a lot of time around that 285, 400 area. We know how important that one is, but could we actually shift the video kind of to the beginning, more on the 75 end, and any nuggets you want to share with the citizens there as far as that current design concept and how it connects into 75 as we head a little bit east on the top end?
Yeah, and one of the questions that we get a lot is, is there any directionality to these lanes? So some of them are, Northwest Corridor operates, one direction all day in the morning, and then in the evening it flips. But these are going to be bidirectional, so they'll operate 24/7. But as we get to the Northwest Corridor tie-in, which you'll see on the screen in here just a minute, the ramps will have to close, in coordination with CERTA, so that it can operate safely. So when the Northwest Corridor is operating in the southbound direction, folks heading on 285 will not be able to go north on 75. So gates will come down and prevent folks from a head-on collision going to hitting traffic heading south. And likewise, when they're operating northbound, gates will close to prevent people from doing that as well. So we've worked out those sort of details, but to make sure that there's still system-to-system connectivity between that express lane system and the express lanes on 285. So here you can see we're crossing over the PED bridge that connects the battery into Cobb Galleria. And then the purple lane sort of smack dab in the middle of your screen here are the connections to the Northwest Corridor. And the express lanes are largely on the outside, elevated around that. And that does keep the height down as well through this area. So we were able to also, Kyle, to do this without reconstructing the majority of the lanes that the Northwest Corridor just built. So we were able to tie into those without having to reconstruct everything. So.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate you going through how that's tying into the 75 end and the proposal on the I-285 top end express lanes project. So we're going to give you a little bit of a break, Patrick. So we're going to ask Cleo to help us with this next one. And it, again, very important aspect tying into regional connectivity is transit. So this next question, Cleo, is what is being done to shift trips towards transit and other more sustainable modes of transportation?
Yes, so by providing more reliable travel times, the transit agencies can make use of the express lanes to run their buses and ensure better and more reliable service, which as a result may shift the mode of choice by some users, thereby reducing vehicle miles traveled on the roads.
Thanks, Cleo. We're going to spend a little bit of time, if we could get the VMR back up there. Just a reminder, our intro speakers, Natalie and Xavier, detailed that at length. Amber talked about our new virtual footprint that we've really expanded upon the last few years to make that more robust and give you additional time and another way to have your comments and your voice heard. So when you come in, click on that space, do a simple search. If you hadn't been to the main project page before, just I-285 top end express lanes, it's going to take you here. This virtual meeting room is going to be a short scroll down. You'll see all the latest information. Natalie's video will be there. That's going to kind of give you, hey, this is why we're here. This is our need and purpose. This is the general project scope and a history of where we have been in years previous, where we're at now, and where we hope to go. So it's very mobile friendly as well. As a lot of us are doing everything on our devices. So it is optimized for those various phones too, if you want to scroll and kind of take everything in that way. You see at the top there, you can just scroll left to right to go to various stations that cover the transit part, our partners with CERTA and MARTA, the design part, if you have a specific part and your property fronts I-285 to see what potential impacts could be. Talked about the need and purpose. We've gone through the visual video too. That's a great resource for you to be able to zoom in and say, hey, this is what my future commute may look like with the Express Lanes network expanded in this area. So a lot of cool things to talk about, and we'll leave it on the environmental spot for a second, and we'll kind of just call on Amber. As far as timelines, Amber, and kind of what are the next steps once we complete this process. And just to remind everybody, comments can be accepted through Monday, July 29th. But once we get to the close of business on the 29th, Amber, where do we go from there?
Yes, thank you, Kyle. So at the close of the comment period, we will take a look at all the feedback that we received from the public, respond to those comments. The idea would then be we're going to go out to some mitigation meetings for those communities that are directly impacted on the project, especially targeting some of our environmental justice communities that may have a more difficult time participating in the process. And the purpose of that feedback, and we're also asking for all those participating in these hearing series to provide some information about mitigation that you are concerned about. And what I mean by environmental mitigation, it's what we're looking at for reducing or trying to minimize the effects that this project has on the community. But we want to make sure that we're customizing that to items and things that the public would like to see. We are not able to complete or do everything that people may suggest. Some things may not be possible, might not be constructible. Some items may just not be something that we are able to provide for, but we definitely want to hear from everyone. And also, as part of the final environmental impact statement, we're going to talk about all those mitigation items that we've heard, what items were able to include in the project, which ones we were not, and why we weren't allowed, why we couldn't do that, or why there was something that prevented us from doing that. And so all of those will be explained and updated into the final environmental impact statement that will also identify ultimately what alternative was selected, any items that have changed, update any environmental resource updates that may have come about. So examples, we're expecting the tricolor bat to be listed, things like that. If they've changed since we've looked at anything, we'll update those, go through, get our document ultimately signed and approved by Federal Highway, And then once that happens, we will be able to post that out to the public, and you'll be able to see all the ways that we responded to your mitigation feedback. But definitely as part of this process, let us know how you feel about the project and anything that you would like to see as mitigation efforts. Thank you so much for the question.
Thanks, Amber. So talking transit again and just kind of general infrastructure planning, what we propose to do with the top end. I'm going to ask Cleo to help me with this next question that came in. So Cleo, why is Georgia DOT building these lanes rather than building more transit?
It's a good question. It's important to note that traditional funding for transit projects come from the Federal Transit Administration and local funding. Currently, there is not sufficient transit funding for a heavy rail transit-only solution on I-285. However, Georgia DOT is working collaboratively with the region's transit operators and planning agencies through their ongoing study of transit within the I-285 express lanes. It's also important to note that Georgia Express lanes are considered transit lanes, regardless of whether they are considered as bus rapid transit or support another type of bus transit. Express lanes transit improves existing transit operations and performance, provides more reliable transit trip times, and promotes transit-oriented development.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification, Cleo. So Patrick, gonna draft you again. We sort of did the walkthrough. Obviously, we kind of started 285, 400, how that's going to interact in the proposal. We just did 75 tie-in South Atlanta Road heading up 285. Let's sort of go to the 85 end and spend a little time talking about the design concept, the tie-ins, any pertinent nuggets you want to share there.
Yeah, and as we're just to get our bearings here, so we're just west of Chamblee Dunwoody here. So you'll see some orange pavement on your screen, and that represents some general purpose facilities that are going to be reconstructed or improvements made to the general purpose to accommodate the Express Lane project. So in this area, Savoy is currently a two-way road heading eastbound and westbound, as well as Cotillion. But in the proposed configuration, both of those roadways will be converted to a one-way pair, which means that Cotillion will operate in the westbound direction where Savoy will operate in the eastbound direction. And that's primarily to accommodate the access point at North Shallowford that connects the express lanes to the local network, as well as provide an access for users to get in and out of the express lane directly from I-285 today. And now we're heading sort of in the eastbound direction again towards Peachtree Boulevard. So the project is going to improve the weave between North Peachtree and Peachtree Boulevard in the westbound direction. So those of us that drive this regularly, we know that there's a really, really poor, bad congestion in that area. And so this project is going to propose to reconstruct that and separate those movements, so it's easier to get between the two interchanges, less disruption to the general purpose lanes. So some improvement there to the general public on the general purpose lanes, but that also allows for the express lanes to also go up and over those. And then through this area, we're elevated on the outside still. We're approaching the access point near Flowers Road here at the top of our screen. There'll be an eastbound off ramp that'll head back and cross over the interstate and then access Flowers Road on the north side, as well as a westbound on ramp that allows folks to get back into the system and head west. And then just on the other side of the railroad tracks, there is a proposed access point at New Peachtree, and that's actually really close to the MARTA transit station, which is an excellent opportunity for partnering with MARTA. And then heading eastward, now we're over Buford Highway and then we're approaching Spaghetti Junction. And so it's important to note here that Spaghetti Junction is also very tall right now. So there's 4 or 5 levels there already. So this project will propose connections directly into the I-85 hot lane that's on 85 today. But in order to do that, the express lanes will go up another level or two over Spaghetti Junction. We've pushed that out as far as we can to keep that level and elevation down, so we're not having to be so high. And then the camera's going to pan and head north, so we can show you what's happening as we tie into the hot lane system. So there'll be connectivity eastbound to northbound as well as southbound, and in both directions. But there's no connectivity, as I mentioned earlier, to the inside of the perimeter from I-285. For those of us that are aware, I-85 is a very, very tight corridor through here. There's a lot of businesses that affront this, and we were able to squeeze in the express lane connections with some minimal impacts in this area, but it does require some reconstruction of I-85, basically from 285 all the way up to Pleasantdale Road. But the express lanes will braid back into the middle so that they can tie directly into the existing hot lane system. And that, again, allows seamless operations between users that take out I-85 hot lanes now to get into the 285 system, or for those that don't ride on the hot lane system but still want to get into the 285 system without getting on 285, they can get in at the last buffer break near Jimmy Carter and then head south and then get on the express lanes on 285 using this configuration.
Thanks for that breakdown, Patrick, and specifically how it's tying in, just like we did on the 75 end, to those existing Georgia Express Lanes network. So kind of in the beginning when we kicked off, after we showed the intro videos for the folks that joined us around the 11 o'clock hour, we went straight to our air and noise GDOT section manager, Miles Kemp, just to kind of talk through what's always a hot topic and folks are curious about noise mitigation. So Miles, just generally what goes into that process? I know it's a lot, and what resources are available on the VMR for folks to learn more about this?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, so I'll just say that we have the completed noise impact assessment. Again, it's based upon the current preliminary design, so it's always subject to future revisions if the design changes. But that is available on the public-facing Top End Express Lanes website. If you click on the environmental section, you can go to the draft EIS, and I believe it's Appendix H9, which again is going to be the full noise impact assessment. But again, if you want to access a lot of the kind of summarized information, where we're proposing noise barriers, which areas may qualify as impacted, we have a lot of great information kind of summarized and presented here in the virtual meeting room, the VMR, under the air and noise impact section. And so you'll actually see a little snippet of me right there standing looking all smug. But we have a layout posted right there, a PDF, Am I Getting a Noise Barrier? And this is meant to generally, kind of summarize from a high level, which areas we have identified existing barriers that the proposed project is not currently expecting to disturb, and then also those areas where we have existing barriers that we may be currently proposing to remove and then replace, generally in the same general location. And then again, we have additional areas where we currently have no noise barriers out there, but as a result of this project and the noise impact assessment, the barrier or abatement analyses, we are currently proposing noise barriers along. And I believe there's around 15 locations where we're currently considering those barriers right now. But again, it's preliminary, so nothing is concrete just yet. But we will continue to reassess based upon the design revisions as we proceed to the final design. Again, on this screen that you're seeing right here, we have that Am I Getting a Noise Barrier PDF. We have our noise brochure, which is directly to the right on that little table that we have situated on the screen. And then we have the interactive noise tool. But the noise brochure, again, is fairly high level. We have these generally presented at a lot of our public hearings, our open houses, at just general project meetings from time to time. So, but it is available here on the project website in the virtual meeting room. And then, of course, we have the interactive noise tool. So if we click on that, you'll have another window or tab kind of brought up. And this is really where you'll find a lot of the results stemming from the noise impact assessment that's been completed for the project. And again, you'll see this initial statement of likelihood that's really just talking about that, preliminary nature of these findings. So, again, they're not 100% set in stone just yet, but we have a good expectation that these are areas where we can currently propose noise barriers for. So again, this tool, it shows a lot of little, circles or dots that are meant to basically represent different resources or properties along the project corridor that were considered within that noise impact assessment and that assessment's study area. There's various colors that basically identify whether or not that property is considered to be noise sensitive. For example, maybe like a manufacturing location or a warehouse, that's really not considered a noise sensitive resource. Whereas maybe a church, a school, a residence, those are all areas that typically have exterior noise sensitive areas. And in some cases, we may look at for schools, churches, things of that nature, maybe potentially interior, potential for interior impacts. But by and large, we looked at the noise assessment results. We have identified areas where outdoor impacts are expected to occur, and we have then considered whether or not noise barriers are an effective option that can be feasibly constructed to provide noise mitigation for those areas, for those impacted areas. So again, you'll see those different color receivers or receptors in that legend that highlight whether or not you're expected to qualify as impacted by traffic noise, or if not, it's highlighted in there in a different color. For those impacted and non-impacted areas, you'll see that there's also a breakdown of different colors that show whether or not you're expecting to experience a benefit from a noise barrier that may currently be proposed for that area. And that is basically meant to say that for those areas where we are proposing noise barriers, there may be an effective benefit or noise reduction achieved by a noise barrier that's being considered for that location. Certainly, you can see various colors that show up as like different lines that highlight, again, the locations of existing barriers or maybe even barriers that are currently actively being constructed by other projects that overlap with the 285 corridor. We have colors that show existing barriers that are proposed for removal and then replacement, generally in the same locations and generally aiming to provide the same or better noise reduction after that replacement is constructed. And then we have new barriers proposed in another color that basically are for areas that are qualifying as impacted that currently do not have a noise barrier out there. So definitely you can see all those different colors for those different barriers in this tool. And then we have other areas that are represented in this kind of boxed, not so much shading, but you have the diagonal lines that are meant to highlight and call attention to areas that we did assess as potentially being impacted by the proposed project once it's constructed in the future. And for those areas, we did conduct an abatement analysis to basically consider whether or not we could construct a noise barrier in that location and whether or not that barrier would be effective or not. And ultimately, when I say effective, we're looking at both a twofold effectiveness for noise reduction as well as, can we benefit so many resources and properties compared to the overall dimensions or length that may be needed. So we're considering a lot of different things. And for each of those areas where you might see, hey, noise barriers are not currently proposed or recommended at this point in time, according to the tool, if you actually click on those, it should summarize generally some of the reasoning or justification for why we're not currently considering a noise barrier. But more detailed information may be found, again, in the noise impact assessment, which is H9 appendix of the DEIS. And I guess one last thing I just wanted to say that, yeah, if you're looking for a specific address in here, there's actually a tool up in the top right corner where it says like find address or place. You could type in that address. It should generally identify, what you're looking for in a kind of a drop down as you're seeing on the screen. And if you click on that, it should take you to generally the location where that address or property is located. So.
Thank you, Miles. Yes, sir. So while we're on that end around the Paces Ferry corridor, the next question was just that. Neighborhood adjacent to 285 just west of Paces Ferry. Does this portion call for a noise barrier addition?
So yeah, so I will say that, in the area that we're looking at, we see a couple of different colors and a couple of different boxed areas that are kind of shown. So it really does depend upon the specific location we're talking about. But I will say that there are areas that we're seeing on screen, like say to the east on the north the northern end of the screen here on the east side of 285, so inside the perimeter, we have a location where we're currently proposing a new noise barrier. Whereas on the west side, for one reason or another, we may not be proposing a noise barrier, I believe largely due to constructability, maintenance conflicts. And, for some of these areas, there's a lot of complicated engineering kind of concerns or limitations that might be precluding us from considering a barrier. But again, more information beyond just what might be offered on or in this noise tool can be located in the noise impact assessment as well. There are other areas too where we're seeing replacement barriers, typically highlighted in that kind of goldish, yellowish kind of color on the screen. And those are areas, again, where we currently have existing noise barriers, but for one reason or another, we may require that area to construct the project. Maybe it's more effective if we shift it back and maybe increase the height from what is currently out there. And I do know that there are a couple of locations in the general area where we're expecting to see, maybe changes in those barrier heights, generally increases. But, you can actually click on those barriers, particularly the replacement ones. And if you click on them, you will see a little bit more information for that barrier, including, what the status of that barrier is. And again, it corresponds to that legend. So in this one, we're seeing is proposed as a replacement barrier or replace in kind. And then additionally, at the very bottom of that bubble, you'll see that average barrier height that is currently expected for that replacement barrier. So for this one, we're seeing it's an average height of 30 feet along that barrier, but it may vary from location to location. And again, some of that is ultimately going to be constrained by like engineering requirements and whatnot. So, but based upon our current expectations, that's the information that we're expecting for the barrier heights. So, yeah, if you have a specific location in mind, I would definitely encourage you to check out this tool. You could probably find more detailed information, especially if you have a specific address you'd like to type in there in the top right. And again, hopefully some of this information I've kind of reviewed helps answer or address that question.
Right, and Miles, while we're on the topic of height, that's been a curiosity that a lot of the citizens have had during this open comment period. Could you just talk us through, obviously you can draft in, Patrick, from a design perspective if you need to, when we're talking about elevated roads, how does that play into the calculus for noise mitigation, having that infrastructure be a lot higher than the main line?
Certainly, yeah. And so I will say first thing is that the main or majority chief traffic noise source is still going to be the existing I-285 lanes out there. When you look at the number of traffic lanes along I-285, existing I-285 compared to those express lanes, you have simply a much larger traffic volume that also contributes to a much larger traffic noise source compared to the limited traffic that would be along those elevated or just general express lane sections. So when you're looking at traffic noise generally, to really experience like a perceptible increase, and we're talking maybe around the lines of like a 3 decibel increase, which again I would just summarize as being like a perceptible, like you could hear potentially a change from the current sound level to maybe a future sound level that's increased by 3 decibels if traffic is doubled. And in order to really hear that, you would have to basically double the traffic that's currently out there. And certainly with just those 2 lanes on both of the sides of I-285, we're not expecting to see that sort of increase in traffic. So when we compare the absolute kind of contribution from those express lanes from traffic noise perspective, it should be very limited, and in many locations, it should be imperceptible. However, as you kind of mentioned, Kyle, we do have the other consideration of the location of those express lanes to kind of factor into it. And certainly, in some areas it's moving closer or further out, expanding the footprint of that traffic noise source from existing I-285. So that is something that we definitely consider in our analysis, along with the locations where those elevated express lanes will not simply be at that same height as existing I-285. So all of that is considered in our noise analysis, as well as our noise abatement or noise barrier analyses as well. And that is something that ultimately drives the recommended location and height of noise barriers that may be considered. I will generally say that with the main line I-285 being the chief noise source, the additional traffic noise that might be generated by even the elevated sections is still going to be so minimal in most areas that any noise barrier that we might propose along those elevated sections is largely not going to provide any additional or a perceptible addition of traffic noise reduction compared to noise barriers that simply are proposed to mitigate traffic noise from, again, mainline I-285. So there is a rhyme and reason for why we're considering barriers of certain heights in certain locations, as well as generally not along some of those elevated express lane sections. But again, you'll have to refer to some of the more detailed information in the noise assessment to identify each and every location. But I will just generally say that for the most part, noise barriers along those elevated lanes have been shown to not be effective at contributing towards a noise reduction compared to putting noise barriers that block simply the traffic noise from mainline I-285.
Thanks for clarifying that, Miles. So we just got the 5-minute warning for this meeting and live event. So appreciate all you who took time out of your day to visit us and learn more about this proposed I-285 Top End Express Lanes project. So we've tried to provide a lot of opportunities, whether that's in the virtual format, these Q&A sessions, the in-person meetings. We've had some great feedback there. We've tried to spread those about the corridor to, again, meet you where you are and give you multiple opportunities to comment. So once this wraps up in a few minutes, we actually have one more opportunity, which is in person at the city of Sandy Springs, which is coming up tomorrow. So I'm just going to kind of kick it to Cleo from our project GDOT management side on just general feedback and how we're continuing to encourage the public to come see us in these various platforms.
Thanks, Kyle. As you know, we have made available several ways for public comment because we do value the input from the public. This is a very critical stage in the project development, the PHOH, and so we have made available for in-person PHOHs. In the video that was shown earlier, the dates and times of those events were listed, and we've also made available 2 virtual PHOH meetings for those that may not be able to make the in-person meetings. So we do encourage the public to review the document, to provide comments, and to stay engaged with us in our project website as the project continues to develop.
Thank you, Cleo. And that's my little avatar there, directing you to that all-important comment station. So there's a lot of different ways to submit your comment. Obviously, the first one highlighted there is that online survey that you can take anytime prior to the end of the comment close, which is going to be Monday, July 29th. There's also opportunities to mail in feedback, and it's going to describe all the ways you can do that there if you're curious on an additional way outside of just the virtual format to make your voice heard. So another reminder, just check out that virtual meeting room if you haven't already. We think that's a good way to highlight everything this project entails, and most importantly, highlight potential mitigation measures. And we have to hear from you. We want to hear from as many people as possible, positive or negative, because all that can inform, our future path on this project and different mitigation components that might be incorporated too. So definitely tour through the VMR. Again, it's very mobile friendly for folks who like to use their devices to tour around the website and everything. So when we talked about the importance of the public comment, there's actually a dedicated slide to what has changed since we went to you at a previous iteration of this project, kind of in that 2020 time period. So you're going to see where some of the design was refined, and there was some updates made to what you see now that's the current preferred alternative. So kind of can see that there. We talked about the height of the proposed lanes and how that ties into the greater project scope. You see the what's changed slide. We have Cleo's avatar there walking y'all through that one. So this is definitely important to us. So make sure if you haven't already, leave your comment by July 29th. Tell your family, tell your friends, make sure they check out the materials, get educated, and let us know what you think. And that welcome station with Natalie Dale, statewide spokesperson, she's going to give you about a 3-minute rundown of what this virtual meeting room platform is and all the unique things you can do there. So that's kind of be your starting point, and then you'll move along and hopefully leave us a comment. And like Cleo said too, we're going to have all the same team in person showcasing these same informational boards at the city of Sandy Springs to close out from 4 to 7 at City Springs. So now that we sort of get to the end, I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this public meeting as part of the public hearing open house for the proposed I-285 Top End Express Lanes project. Recording this virtual event is going to be posted on the project website in the coming days. If you have any further questions or would like to leave additional feedback, please visit that project website or contact us by phone or email. Special thanks to everybody who worked on these sessions, and hope to see y'all again soon.